The Portland Trail Blazers made a big splash when they drafted young Hansen with the 16th overall pick in this past year's draft. But could the rookie big man be a real difference maker this year for your Portland Trail Blazers? We're going to talk about that and more on this episode of Blazers Uprise Live. What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Blazers Uprise Live here on a Monday, kicking off the week of September 15th. We are less than a month away from preseason basketball for your Portland Trail Blazers, and now we begin to preview the 2025-2026 NBA season, and we start with maybe the funnest player going into training camp, the rookie, the big man who was a fan favorite during Summer League. That, of course, is young Hansen. We're going to talk about if he could be a difference maker for your Portland Trail Blazers and what the best case scenario might look like for his rookie season. This is going to be one of multiple live streams where we really dive in deep into player previews. I figured he is somebody that we could talk about for quite a while. So he's going to kick things off here as we begin to ramp up for this year's NBA season. Eric, what's going on, man? How was your weekend and how are you doing?
I'm good. How's everyone in Chatland? Tori, congratulations on getting the right day today. It's a big accomplishment.
Yeah, I'm improving. You know, I put in a lot of work this offseason in terms of knowing what day it is, and we're starting to see it pay off.
Very good, very good. Yeah, had kids soccer games on Saturday and Sunday. That was pretty much all I did this weekend.
How'd those go? We love your coaching stories. So how'd those go?
Well, I'm not coaching either of these soccer teams, but yeah, my son's team won 4-2. My daughter's team lost 3-2. But yep.
Gotcha.
How about you? What'd you do?
I watched my Mariners win their 9th in a row. I watched my fantasy team win. I watched the Niners win. The Niners are 2-0. My fantasy team's 2-0. My Mariners won 9 straight. It's a pretty good little stretch that I'm on right now. So I've been enjoying sports, which is pretty cool. You know, I don't always enjoy sports. It was just a week and a half ago that I was happy when the Mariners had an off day because that means that they weren't going to lose another freaking game. And now they haven't lost a game in over a week. So I'm high on baseball. I'm high on fantasy football. and things are going well. And Mac Jones was balling out for our Niners. So hopefully this good fortune for me lasts through October into November, because that would mean the Blazers are also doing some good things. But we'll have to wait and see on that one.
We just need an Etsy curse or whatever they did with the Mariners, we need to do with the Blazers, right?
You know what? I want to see how they do at the start of the season. And then if we're struggling, you know what? We can do it on a live stream. I can buy an Etsy witch to uncurse the Blazers. If you don't know the backstory, so the Mariners have been one of the most cursed franchises the past 25 years. And they were really, really struggling like 10 days ago. And somebody had a viral tweet where they paid an Etsy witch to basically uncurse the Mariners. And since they did that, the Mariners have won 9 in a row. So I guess it works. I don't know. I'm starting to believe in witchcraft. If they win a few more games here, man, I might start showing up to streams in a witch's hat at that point, because that means good luck. I don't know. We might have to buy an Etsy witch this year if things don't start off hot.
Yeah, we gotta do what you gotta do, right?
Yeah. Yep. Connor, member for 46 months, says, any fantasy winners in the chat? Shout out to Connor. I think he won his first September fantasy football matchup in our league in like 3 years. I think he started 0-4 the last 2 years. Correct me if I'm wrong, Connor. But shout out to Connor for finally scratching out a nail biter and winning a fantasy football matchup in September. His fantasy football season would start when the Blazers season started, essentially. So, shout out to Connor getting off to a hot start for himself. Thank you for being a channel member. And yeah, I don't know. We'll have to test that out. But I don't want to mess with that until after a potential World Series run for my Mariners. All right, I'm not going to tempt things until then. I'm just gonna let things ride. All right, so Blazers are gonna have to do without an Etsy curse for at least the first week and a half of their season, and then we can see what we can do.
Sounds good to me.
Anyway, we're gonna talk about Young Hansen. We're going to talk about Panda Express. Panda Express. That's a full circle moment. I tweeted this out. That's a full circle moment. If you know, you know. All right. There's some people that like that tweet that I don't know if they know what I'm talking about. But yeah, if you're an OG, maybe you remember the Panda Express segment from back in the day. But we'll talk a little bit about the ownership situation. We're going to try and take more questions this stream. Maybe talk about the center situation as a whole with Robert Williams and Donovan Clingan, as those guys, I think, factor into the Young Hansen conversation. That's, of course, if we have time, starting here at 10 p.m. on the West Coast on a Monday night. But yeah, ready for the season to get started and looking forward to previewing things. Shout out to Muvsy Hoops for becoming an all-star level member. He's rocketed up the MVP rankings. My guy Muvsy here. Shout out to him. And yeah, let's get this thing rolling. So the Blazers have been adding minority ownership. They, I believe, have 3 confirmed minority owners right now. The third one was just announced. And it is... Oh, God. This is why I need to come prep to streams. This is what I got better at knowing the names, but I got to get better at actually prepping streams because I did not do any prep for the stream. I'm not going to lie. All I know is Panda Express related, which matters to me. Okay, so Panda Express founders Andrew and Peggy Churn became co-owners of the Portland Trail Blazers, is the tweet that I'm seeing. Maybe it was just one of them. Regardless, we have Panda Express coming to Moda Center. How over under 1.5 Panda Expresses in Moda Center? Maybe one upper level, one lower level. I mean, we probably will have Panda Express, right? That's really the conversation that matters to me. So Eric,
got to be at least one.
Got to be at least one.
Got our orange chicken there, right?
The thing is, will the orange chicken actually be good? Because it's hit or miss depending on what Panda Express you go to, and it's very inconsistent, as I've said for years now. It's very hit or miss. So that honestly would be an important thing for me to try. If there's a Panda Express in Moda Center, I need to try it. I need to come to the post-game show. I need to give a review. So, we'll see. We'll see. But I think kind of the more interesting thing is Tom Dundon is not the wealthiest owner in the NBA. I mean, we see owners with just $50 million to pass out underneath the table. Steve Ballmer. Tom Dundon is not that guy. There's been people that have talked about how he pinches pennies a little bit when it comes to Carolina Hurricanes. And listen, I'm not expecting the Blazers to be a tax team. And honestly, it's harder to be a tax team nowadays, especially with the second apron rules. If you go past that, how strict and punishing those rules are. I'm not somebody that's going to sit here with a new ownership coming in saying they have to pay the tax, But I think kind of the bigger thing with him not being one of the richest owners is just how much of a share does he have with the Portland Trail Blazers? How much of his own capital is going towards this $4 billion price tag that the Blazers are being sold for? And I think we heard early on that he was looking for more investors, more people to buy some stake into the purchase, especially from the Portland area. We've seen that, and now we have a new part of this ownership group that has been confirmed. And this just made me wonder, Eric, is how big is this ownership group going to be? What's the dynamic of this ownership group going to be? Is this just people buying in because it's a worthwhile investment? Is this people buying in that want to be invested in any part of the actual day-to-day operations of the team? I think these are questions that we might not even get answers to even once the sale is final. I'm not sure. But it does make me wonder exactly what the dynamic is going to be with this new ownership group, because it is going to be a legitimate group in a way that we did not see prior to this purchase.
Well, two things. One is, as these teams get more and more expensive, it limits how many people even have the opportunity to buy them. But this is becoming much more common to have a majority owner, but have all kinds of other investors. And there was an article by Jason Quick, and everything that has been said and since Tom Dundon came forward as the possible buyer has said that any sort of group or people that were involved would all answer to him as the majority owner.
Yep. Of course, he's going to have final say. He is going to be the majority owner. I do wonder what that looks like and what the stakes are. And yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit new to me to have this team kind of owned by a group, because we had Paul Allen and then you had Jody on behalf of Vulcan and company, and that was a placeholder. It's going to be, I think, interesting just to see how this team is ran. Tom Dundon will have final say, but does that mean he's the only owner with any say at all? I'm not sure.
It said it would be him as the voice of the group. So yeah.
Yep.
And then also this is like very common. Like it's not really talked about, but most ownership groups, like the Bucks a few years ago sold like part of their team. Like Cuban sold his majority, but like he didn't own like 100% of the team, so he still owns like part of it, I think, but sold. So the new owner has the majority of it, and that's usually how it works. But yeah, it's very common. It just came out through this Pablo Torre thing that the Clippers are one of the few teams that actually Ballmer owns 99% of it. I guess they were saying that's very rare with teams nowadays, that one owner owns that much of a percentage of a team. Yeah, it's pretty common. It's just people. It's just investments. Yeah, with the cost of teams and things like that. It's one of the most sure things in investing your money, if you're rich, is to do that. And the other cool thing about the Panda Express deal is that the woman who was involved is also went to Oregon State, so she has some Oregon ties. And we know one of the other investors also is involved here in Portland. So at least two of the minority owners are going to have Portland or Oregon ties, which is nice.
Yep. Yep. At the end of the day, I don't expect the financial situation regarding payroll, regarding player contracts, regarding the luxury tax to really change all that much going from Jody Allen to a Tom Dundon-led ownership group. My only hope is that it doesn't get even stricter in terms of budget. I don't think it will, but there is some people that have said he penny pinched with the Carolina Hurricanes. I've also heard reports that, or stories about how they're pouring in a lot of money into the surrounding area and Tom Dundon spending his money that way, which I think is a good sign, but also is that just something where he knows he's going to recoup that investment and it's just a smart business play. I don't know. There was a story about how he basically the longtime Carolina Hurricanes radio voice, he had his contract expire, and this was when Tom Dundon was new. I believe it was 1 year into his ownership of the Carolina Hurricanes. Their long-term radio voice expired, and this was a guy that was beloved by the Carolina Hurricanes fan base. This was a guy, basically, if you're a Mariners fan, this was like their Dave Niehaus was like a comparison, and he didn't get fired, but his contract came up for renewal, and Tom Dundon in the Carolina Hurricanes, when they offered him a new contract, it had an 80% pay cut to it. Basically, by penny pinching, they ran him out of town. Now he's the voice of the Seattle Kraken in Seattle, and Tom Dundon and the Carolina Hurricanes decided to basically simulcast their radio and their television broadcasts in order to save money. So we've heard a lot of good things, and I've shared a lot of my optimism with this ownership group. That was a story that gives me a little bit more pessimism. I'm not pessimistic. I think he did a good job with the Carolina Hurricanes, considering he bought that franchise when they were on the brink of relocation and they were one of the worst franchises in the league, and now they've become a relatively successful NHL franchise, doubled in value. So even if he was penny pinching as owner, he was still doing a good job as owner in terms of turning that franchise around and putting a good product on the ice. So if he's going to come in with that same mentality, I just hope it ends up with the same results in terms of a competitive product on the floor. But that is, I would be lying if I said that wasn't a thought at all, that maybe he might even be a little bit cheaper in terms of player contracts. We heard how player agents rated him as the worst owner in the NHL, and I respect that. He's not a pushover when it comes to contract negotiations, when it comes to dealing with agents. But also, is there a downside to that where he's maybe a little too stingy, and could that backfire? I don't know. These are just some of the questions that I have given what we've heard for this ownership group. I'm still optimistic in terms of a Tom Dundon-led organization holding itself to a higher standard than a Vulcan, Burt Cole, Jody Allen owned organization. I feel like this franchise the past 5 years just kind of settled for mediocrity and was okay with that. And when you give Chauncey Billups an extension after 4 losing seasons because he won 36 out of 82 games last season, that was such a good thing. You gave him a big extension on your way out the door. That's the type of stuff that we'll hopefully avoid, and hopefully this new ownership group will hold this organization to a higher standard in terms of their on-court product. But how does that play out when it comes to payroll and player salaries? I'm not sure what that's going to look like.
I actually feel the complete opposite. I am 100% confident that he is, based on his personality of wanting to win. And also in the NHL, they don't really have like a luxury tax system, but not every team spends to the salary cap. It's actually a big issue in the NHL. and he is one of the few teams that was willing to spend all their cap on players and stuff like that. So I'm actually between everything I've heard about his personality and wanting to win, I don't think he's just going to come in here and be like, oh, well, we can't win because we're going to pinch pennies and do all that kind of stuff. So I don't think he'd be buying this team if he didn't plan on. I'm not sure about like just going into the luxury tax and the apron because there are cap reasons for not doing that. But in terms of doing what it takes to win, I think he will end up doing that.
So here's where things get a little interesting. If you look at the Carolina Hurricanes payroll the last 3 years, it has been in the bottom 12. It has been 3 years ago, it was 20th out of 32 teams. 2 years ago, it was 29th out of 32 teams. And this past season, it was 24th out of 32 teams. I need to go back further, but even in 2021, 2022, they were 18th out of 32 teams. So this has not been a team that spends in the top half of the NHL recently. That is also something that has made me wonder, and I'm not saying that's necessarily indicative of anything with the NBA. They're completely different CBAs and salary cap systems. But I don't have the confidence that he's going to come in and spend on player salaries when you look at the last time that they were in the top half of the league in terms of payroll was 2020 to 2021 season where the Carolina Hurricanes were 7th, right? He came in, the season before that, they were dead last in the league. So there's one season under his ownership where they really spent money on his watch. He took over the team in 2018. They were second highest payroll that year. A lot of those salaries were probably from the previous ownership group. So they haven't been a team that's spending a ton of money. The thing is, they haven't needed to. So is that the smart thing? If you can win games and be competitive and contend for Stanley Cup finals appearances with a payroll that's in the bottom quarter of the league, that's probably the best thing for everybody involved. The owner isn't spending as much money, but the product on the ice is still really, really good. Now, can you do that in the NBA to the same extent? Probably not. So, like I said, I don't think his spending in the NHL with the Carolina Hurricanes is necessarily indicative of anything that is going to be in the NBA. It just makes me wonder what that's going to look like in terms of payroll and how much money he's willing to spend. And if it's just like, yeah, he's willing to spend whatever as long as they're below the luxury tax, then that's fine. That's basically the way it was with Jody Allen and Burt Cold. And I'm hopeful, and I'd like to believe that that's the case, but I'm not 100% certain. We're going to have to see.
Yeah, shout out to Muzzy for becoming an all-star member too. I don't know. I feel like the NBA too is a much different animal in terms of you're coming into this new media deal where teams are making a ton of money. There hasn't been the issues that there has been in the past, or even with the NHL in terms of teams losing money and things like that. So I do feel like it's set up for him to go a little more out, at least up until that first apron. I'll give him a chance until I get worried about it.
Yeah, and I'd like to reiterate, I'm not worried. I'm not pessimistic. It's just something that's on my mind. I think it's possible that he's maybe a little bit stricter with player salaries, player payroll. I don't know how likely it is. It's just speculation. Nobody really knows how much he's going to spend when he comes in here and where the payroll limits are going to be. So we're just going to have to wait and see. Now, as part of this thought exercise, I have a question for chat and a question for Eric. In the summer of 2023, if Tom Dundon owned the Portland Trailblazers with Damian Lillard out the door, does Tom Dundon approve the contract that Jeremy Grant was given? Of course, this is also just going to be speculation. This is kind of just a pure guess because nobody really knows. But do you think he would have approved that contract if he was owner?
Is would he be coming into the ownership situation that summer, or would he have been the owner the year prior?
If you think that answer matters, you can differentiate between the two situations.
Okay, so I believe that this group, this organization, convinced themselves that they could still prove that they didn't need Dame and thought they were going to be pretty good without him. And so I think they talked themselves into not only Jeremy coming back, but also this is the thing that's kind of rarely brought up, and it is kind of messed up, but Jeremy is a Clutch client, and there was this whole thing about when we traded for him, he could have signed a small extension then. He did not want to do that. And then he actually plays pretty well for us the first year, but the plan was to have him sign, I believe it was like 4 years, $92 million extension or something like that. He was eligible for during that season, somewhere around there. Maybe it was as much as 106 million, somewhere between 92 and 106 million, if I remember right. And he ended up playing well enough to where Clutch went to the Blazers and kind of said, well, like, we feel like he can get more than that this offseason. And they basically, from what I heard, I mean, you guys can believe what you want, but they basically had reached an agreement with Jeremy long before the summer even came to be. And so if Dundon was owning the team and he was part of that process to where you promise Clutch, a Clutch client, a certain contract, and then if you pull that contract or offer him much less, you could maybe get away with it by saying, we weren't planning on dealing Dame this summer or for Dame to request out. So, things changed. I'm sorry. But that might kind of screw you in today's NBA landscape. So did they do that contract just to appease their promise they gave to Jeremy months before? Or did they really think, Jeremy had a good year, like we'll keep winning with him? Either way, I don't think Dundon would have let it get to that point necessarily, to where you have to offer him 5 years, 160 million. I think he would have kind of leveled out the playing field. And also, I don't think he lets the Dame situation get to that point either.
Yeah, shout out Josh Sargent for the donation. I'll read it in a sec. You took this down the road that I wanted you to take it, because the follow-up to this was, okay, depending on how he would handle the situation differently, and given that agents in the NHL don't like him, would he have pissed off Clutch Sports in the process of the Jeremy Grant situation playing out underneath his watch, right?
That's true. If agents don't like him already in the NHL, yeah.
And then you do not want to piss off Clutch. They have, I don't know the exact number, so maybe I'm wrong, but I believe they have the most clients across the NBA. They're very, very huge agency representing a lot of NBA clients. You do not want to get on bad terms with them as an organization. And we could sit here and be like, okay, he wouldn't have let the Blazers give Jeremy Grant that contract. That would have been a good thing. But if he pissed off Clutch Sports in the process, would that have actually been a good thing? I don't know. That's where you look at ownership and things can play out completely differently. Something that might seem better might be worse in the long run, especially if it was a situation where the Blazers agreed well ahead of time to that contract with Jeremy Grant. It's kind of tough to back out of that, even though Dame requested out, because all the Blazers' actions were basically to push Dame down that path. And I'm sure Jeremy Grant recognized that. I'm sure Clutch Sports recognized that. So if you're making all these moves to basically push Dame out, regardless if you believe that was the Blazers' intention or not at the time, Dame specifically said they need more veterans. They need to get a little older. Cronin echoed those sentiments in exit interviews, and then he used the third overall pick on a 6'2 guard, 19-year-old guard to help Dame, right? So the actions pushed Dame out. It's hard to go to Clutch Sports if you have an agreement in place and say, hey, we didn't expect Dame to ask out, when all your actions that offseason was to lead down that path to Dame ultimately asking out. So I don't know. If you back out of that contract, then would it have pissed off Clutch Sports to the point that that's something that could hurt the Blazers in other potential areas in the future? I don't know. I think that's possible. So agent relationships, I think, might be more important in the NBA than they are in NHL. I don't know NHL well enough to confidently say that, but agent relationships are very important in the NBA, especially when one player can completely transform your organization. So I don't know how he would have handled that situation. I'd like to believe that he would not have offered that contract to Jeremy Grant well ahead of time without seeing how the offseason plays out. That just seems like kind of a lazy thing to do, is to offer that contract well ahead of time. There wasn't really a need to do that, in my opinion. So, you know, in a different universe where he bought this team 3-4 years sooner, I think that's how it would have played out, and that would have been for the better. And we, you know, who knows how anything else plays out, the whole Dame situation. I'm not even going to get into speculating that, but that's what I'd like to believe is he would have handled that situation differently in a way to hopefully not piss off Clutch Sports, but then also not pay Jeremy Grant an obscene contract.
Can I throw out a little bit of a conspiracy here?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Do you know who else on the Blazers is a Clutch client?
I don't know.
That 6'2 guard that we picked third.
Yeah, that's true.
So we had just drafted a Clutch client. Damian Lillard, not a Clutch client. I don't know. Young is too. I don't like, we had Nurk. Nurk is a Clutch one. I think Chauncey is too. But yeah, could Clutch have been okay with the switch from Dame to Scoot as well, as long as their client got paid in the process? Or would I don't know. It feels like, you know, Jeremy, we talked about this, he had a little bit of a deal with the GM and ownership in Detroit that they had like a handshake agreement that if he wanted out, they'd take care of him. And they actually honored that with him and to get here. And if like a year later we're getting rid of, the reason why he came here, I could definitely see a situation where the Blazers were just like, you know what, we're going to take care of you with this contract and stuff like that. Now, based on, like you mentioned, the agents having a bit of an issue with him in the NHL, I don't know if it would have played out the same way, but I definitely feel like with our current organization, they definitely had a little bit of theatrics around that, like kind of weaving Clutch, making sure they were happy when we drafted Scoot, because I mean, obviously at that point everyone thought, Scoot was going to be the future. I'm not saying he can't still be, but like that was that was the pick that was going to be to bridge that gap. And if Scoot is as good as advertised, Jeremy stepping into that role and keeping him happy with the bigger contract. So I just feel like they kind of thought that both they were taking care of Clutch, and they thought this was a move that if Scoot hits the ground running and is good right away, that they might not miss Dame either. So I don't know how the equation changes with Dundon there.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, all we can do is speculate on how he'd own the Blazers or how he would have handled certain situations. I do know that, what do we know? We know that the Carolina Hurricanes have been in the bottom half of spending. We don't know if that means anything for the Blazers. We do know that he seemed to have pissed off a lot of agents. We don't know if he's also going to piss off NBA agents or not. We do know that he invested some money around the arena, and we do know that Moda Center needs either a legitimate renovation. That's not just the arena, that's the area around the arena, or if they don't get that, then they're going to want a new arena. So we don't know how that's going to play out yet. Basically, there's a lot of questions with the new owner coming in that some of which will get answered pretty soon, some of which will linger. Just because there's a new ownership situation doesn't mean that there's a lack of questions about the ownership. It's just a little bit different. It's not, how invested is Jody really? I think Dundon's coming in. He is a competitive guy. Apparently, he sometimes leaves Carolina Hurricanes games early because he hates the thought of losing. So if they get down, he's the type of guy to seemingly get frustrated about it. I like all that. Competitive guy, right? So there's a difference in terms of the makeup of the ownership group and the controlling owner with Tom Dundon and, his personality and how high I think he's going to aim to try and lead this organization. But outside of that, there's still going to be a lot of questions that we're going to have to wait and see on how this ownership group shakes out until we get answers to. Shout out to Josh Sargent. $5 donation says, not huge news, but found out my gym turned down letting the Blazers practice here in late summer. It would have been great to see practices. Interesting, Josh. Thank you for the donation. So you're talking about a Portland gym? Like they didn't have the practice facility? I'm a little confused by that. Or is it like a really nice gym and individual players wanted to? And I don't know. I need a little more context. I'm curious about your story. Of course, Josh works out with the Blazer stunt team. Is there, I'm going to butcher the title probably, Josh, but the strength coach? Something like that? Please remind me so I can get your title right. But he works with the stunt team, so always going to be interesting to hear from him during the season and how things are going with that role that he's in. Thank you, Josh, for the donation. Appreciate you.
This is the MAC.
I don't know what that is.
Multnomah Athletic Club.
Oh. See, I'm from Washington, so I'm a Vancouver guy. I don't know places. Anyway. We only have 3 full-size courts, and they wanted 2. Gotcha. Okay. I wonder why they wanted to be able to practice there when they have the practice facility. Maybe they were doing some renovations of the practice facility or something. I don't know. But yeah.
I'm not sure either. Or maybe some players are just looking to run somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah. I understand why your gym would say no if they didn't want to close down 2 of the 3 full courts. Makes sense. Anyway.
Yeah, the last bit about the ownership. So there's a date in March that it's March for 31st. Sure going to be finalized by. but it did say in the quick article that they were hoping to have it done. They're going to be working to try and finalize it so we can take over sooner than that. But we'll see if that's possible or not. I'm not sure. But he does want to take it over sooner than that.
Yeah, he wants to run the team. So I don't know. You can tell me, chat, if there's an answer to this, but I don't know when the soonest he could take over is. I don't know how much you can streamline this process. Because the ownership group has to be finalized, and maybe it is, and maybe we're just finding out later in terms of some of the minority ownership stakes that have been bought in this purchase, but ownership group has to be finalized, and then I'm sure there's a lot of legal stuff they gotta go through, and then it has to be approved by board of governors. So it's a whole process. I don't know how much they can streamline it. I would love for this ownership group to be in place like January 1st, to have a month before the trade deadline where they can come in and have enough time to, I don't know, like give some directive to the front office. I'm hopeful that Dundon's going to be the guy that comes in and basically demands a plan from the general manager, from Joe Cronin, demands a plan for how they're going to attack transaction periods and is going to expect him to actually fulfill that plan, because it's felt like, and I've ranted about this for a long time, it's felt like the Blazers and a lot of transaction windows don't really seem to have a plan. And of course, you're not in full total control at a trade deadline. We've all heard the famous quote, it takes two to make a trade, or whatever people say every time the Blazers don't make one at the trade deadline. So, of course, it's not just that, but Dundon seems like the type of guy that's going to believe that excuse a little bit less than maybe the prior ownership group did. I don't know. So I would love for that to be in place January 1st. The trade deadline's early February. That would give the ownership group a month to kind of come in, acquaint themselves, give some directive to the front office, or at least have the front office give them what they're planning on doing at the trade deadline and the direction this team is trying to go in terms of their moves at the trade deadline, and then see how things go from there. Because if they're not in place and it's just a lame duck ownership group, and I'm sure Dundon can have a little, he could talk with the front office. I don't know exactly how that works. It's just messy. A messy situation could lead to a deadline where there's not much activity because you're just waiting on the new ownership group to come in. So when you hear March 31st, but they want to get it done sooner, I just immediately think of, how could that affect the trade deadline and the moves that this organization could potentially make or not make?
Yeah, I mean, I think it did say that you would have some input right away, starting the beginning of the season, and that they would honor kind of what his direction is. But yeah, how much can he say? I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe he'll be able to work hand in hand with these guys in the lead up to the deadline, even if the sale's not final, and maybe that doesn't matter. But if it does matter, it would be nice for that to be finalized soon enough where it's not something that's lingering over this franchise at an important transaction window. Because this trade deadline could be very important for the Portland Trail Blazers, no matter which way the season goes, because either you're looking at buying for this team could be a number of different things with the amount of young players and draft capital that they have, or it could be selling a veteran, trying to get off Jeremy Grant's contract, and you could go into the offseason with an obscene amount of cap space with the young core still intact. There are multiple viable directions that the Blazers could go, even if they have a season where they struggle or a season where they are successful. So it's one of the most important trade deadlines I've ever seen for this team coming up at this year's trade deadline, at the 2026 trade deadline, because even if the team struggles, you have Damian Lillard on the horizon then. If some of the young talent is popping, some of it is not popping as much, do you move off of them? Do you move off Drew Holiday if you can? If he's playing well enough, but the team's not that good, do you trade him at the trade deadline so you can have Dame, Scoot, and Sharp? there's going to be so many questions. I feel like the past few trade deadlines has just been about mainly who do the Blazers sell. So that conversation being different with a new ownership group coming in is going to be a wild, wild time.
Yeah, and we do know that Dunn, apparently the first thing he did was study the salaries and trying to learn the CBA and stuff like that. We'll see how quickly he gets up to speed on that. But, I mean, is there any doubt he will come in and see a contract like Jeremy's, especially if he does not have a bounce-back shooting season from last season, and be like, why do we have this contract on our books? I think those are definitely the type of questions he's going to be asking when he comes in.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Young Hansen. So I want to have a discussion about what the best case scenario would be from his rookie season. Without going completely off the wall, like, yeah, as a rookie, he's challenging Nikola Jokic for MVP, okay? Yeah, I'm sure if you believe that there's infinite universes, then there must be a universe out there where that is the case. That's a fun universe to be in. But realistically speaking, he's not going to be, an all-star as a rookie, right? So if we're being realistic, what does the optimal rookie season look like for him? And maybe it's not even the optimal rookie season for the Blazers. Maybe it's Robert Williams unfortunately gets hurt again, and that gives Young Hansen a bunch of minutes, and in these minutes he capitalizes on them and brings these skills to the table. So that's the question for chat. Of course, chat, I always want you to answer these questions and partake in this conversation, but that's also a question to lead you off, Eric. With the hype that he had during Summer League and the unique skill set he has, what would be the optimal rookie season for him be? The best case scenario for him individually?
To me, it's starting off being completely capable as the backup center, looking like he is more than acceptable in those minutes. And then as the season progresses, if we're talking optimal season, it would be he plays well enough in that role to have people question whether he should maybe be starting over Clingan.
Yeah, so I think in order for him to have let's say a maximum impact rookie season, it would take an injury to one of the two centers in front of him. I think it is ultimately going to be tough for him to see heavy minutes as a third-string center, and I don't think he's going to be anything but a third-string center if Robert Williams and Donovan Clingan are healthy. We're talking about Robert Williams, who was in Defensive Player of the Year conversations a few years ago for the Boston Celtics. Still a really good defensive big, good lob target, can pass a little bit. Unfortunately, as Blazer fans, we haven't seen a whole lot of that the past 2 years because he does struggle to stay healthy. I think the most realistic route to having an impact on this team and maybe breaking out as a rookie involves Robert Williams, the third missing time. Unfortunately, he's just been injury prone. We all know that. So I think the realistic path is he gets injured again, unfortunately. I hope that it doesn't happen. I hope that he can have a healthy rest of his career. It sucks that he's had to deal with the knee injuries he's had to deal with that have kind of zapped him of his prime a little bit. It's really unfortunate. I feel for the guy. But when one guy goes down, an opportunity arises for another. That's just the nature of sports, and that would be the nature of an optimal season for Young Hansen. Now, if he's playing with Donovan Clingan, not on the court at the same time, but if that's the two centers, the minutes breakdown would be intriguing. I don't know how much the Blazers are going to be trying to play Donovan Clingan this year. I don't know if it's going to be 32, 33 minutes a game or if they're going to try and keep him a little fresher than that. Of course, there's some people out there that swear that he can't play 30 minutes in a single game to save his life, even though he did it multiple times last season. So I think the most likely path would be Robert Williams misses some time, Donovan Clingan's getting 28 to 30 minutes a game, and Young Hansen's getting 18 to 20 minutes a game. And I think that would be enough of a sample size to give him an opportunity to break out. And if Donovan Clingan gets in foul trouble, which being a rim protector, trying to block as many shots as he does, some of the offensive moving screen calls he gets, there is going to be games where Donovan Clingan's in foul trouble, and if you don't have Robert Williams behind him, that's when you could see Young Hansen play 30 minutes. And when you play 30 minutes, you have a true chance to make a legitimate impact on the game. And with him being somebody with his skill set that I think it's going to take some time to adjust that to the NBA. It's the most athletic basketball league in the world. So some of these backdoor passes or these little lob passes to cutters going towards the rim, the passing windows are different than what he's used to. The passing windows are different than what they were even in Summer League, let alone China, where he played last year. He was also a guy that averaged more turnovers than assists overseas last season. Now he was basically the guy with the ball in his hands all the time, so you kind of understand that. I think the optimistic outlook would be Young Hansen starts getting games where he's playing 20 minutes a game, and in some instances, when circumstances arise, playing 30 minutes in games, and he's able to truly get a feel for passing lanes, passing windows in the NBA, for what passes he can and cannot get away with. I think that's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, but he's a smart player. So if he can pick up on that fast enough, he can certainly pass the ball. He throws some creative passes, and he's going to be playing with athletes that he's never played with before. He's never thrown a lob to a guy like Shaedon Sharpe before. He's probably never played with a player as quick as Scoot Henderson is. Right? And then you got Denny Avdia, who's a 6'9" freight train. Like, he's playing with more talented players, and that would be my hope, is that, yeah, it's harder to maybe fit passes through against NBA-level defenses, but you also have more space on the court with NBA-level shooting. Hopefully this team can show some NBA-level shooting this year. And with the athletes around him, maybe his passing could pop in a way that would make him a truly impactful passer as a rookie big man, which is rare to see. And then the low post stuff, I don't expect him to be a low post player for this team. I don't think he needs to be to have a impact on winning games. I think the short roll playmaking, the short roll finishing, setting good screens, and then knocking down the three ball and being able to make an impact as a passer would make him a unique offensive option off the bench. The defense, I think there's going to be struggles. I think even if Donovan Clingan gets in foul trouble, it might be tough for Young Hansen to play 30 minutes because he might also get in foul trouble. I do expect that to be an issue that arises in some games for him. But if he can shoot the three ball, 34, 35%, which he did not shoot that well last year, but if we're being optimistic, he has a good shooting form. He has a seemingly repeatable stroke. In an optimistic world, he shoots 34, 35% from three, can space the floor enough, which is just going to create more room for Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe, whoever, to drive if he can bring the big out of the paint. And then when he has the ball out there, if he can hit cutters, bring the rim protector away from the rim, and then hit backdoor cutters, Shaedon Sharpe on a backdoor lob, that sort of stuff, that brings a dimension to the Blazers' half-court offense that they otherwise do not have and haven't had for quite a while. And even though he's a rookie, he has the combination of skills to be able to provide that different element to this half-court offense, a half-court offense that really, really struggled last year. We've talked about how stagnant and how problematic the Blazers' half-court offense was last season. Having a big that can make these passes and hopefully bring the opposing big man away from the rim opens up a lot of possibilities for the offense that hopefully Chauncey Billups would be able to scheme out of them, would be able to bring out of them with hopefully a redesign of this half-court offense. So I think Young Hansen being a key cog in that would be a very, very positive development and only bode well going forward into his NBA career if he can come in and have an impact on the offense where he's changing the look of it, changing the dynamic of it, and being able to show these flashes of skill that we've seen in Summer League, we've seen in his scouting tape. If he's able to do that a little bit more consistently, then it's wheels up.
Yeah, and two of the biggest concerns from Summer League were defensive rebounding and just defense in general. And so if he gives you anything on the defensive end, it doesn't look a little out of place or lost like he did at times against Summer League competition. If he kind of locks that down and does a little bit of offense, like you said, I think once again that's the best case scenario, is him looking just adequate enough on defense, and then if he's giving you some nice additions to the offense, I think that's a really great sign. Now, I'm not going to agree with it. You're welcome to your own opinions, but like Chad in chat says that he's better than Clingan and Robert Williams. I mean, I don't know what we're basing that off of, other than hype. But like I said, you're welcome to your own opinion. I don't think the type of skill set he has right now is ideal for him to supplant those two guys. Like, if we're going to be the best Blazer version this year, if we're just talking about individual skill sets, if he is better than them right away, I think that would be a bigger problem, that Clingan and Williams weren't playing very good. But that's just my opinion.
We don't have comparable data points to sit here and say that Young Hansen is better than Robert Williams or Donovan Clingan. Could, in the best case scenario for Young Hansen, could he end up being better than both those guys? Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not going to deny you that, but we literally don't have a legitimate data point to sit here and claim that right now, because Summer League and the CBA, Chinese Basketball Association, is not comparable enough to the NBA. Okay? And we've seen players dominate inferior leagues before and then come to the league and they can't make it happen in the NBA. Now, I don't think that's the case for Young Hansen, and I certainly hope it's not the case. But this is where, going into this year, man, these are the types of conversations we always partake in with chat. At this point, like, this is a message to all of you. We need to give the kid some time and be patient with him, good or bad. Positive or negative, we can't be sitting here and making... I mean, you can make whatever claims you want to, but logically it doesn't really make sense to make some of these claims. I know the first game he has like 20 points, 10 rebounds, and 4 assists. People are going to come out of the woodwork saying Clingan could never do that. See, he's better than Clingan. Right? Just off of one game. And there's also the crowd of people that the second a prospect struggles, they love to just nitpick them to death in terms of they're not good. See, that was a reach. They shouldn't have picked him at 16. They should have taken Nick Clifford. Listen, I was a guy that wanted Nick Clifford, but I'm not going to be the guy that's sitting here after the kid struggles for a game, because he's going to have games where he struggles. I'm not going to be the guy sitting here making claims like, see, that's why it was a reach. That's why they should have taken Nick Clifford off of one game. Okay? You can't tell anything from you can't tell much long-term for a 20-year-old big man. This is how I want to phrase it. You can't tell much long-term from a 20-year-old big man off of one game or 2 games or Summer League or the CBA. We're going to need to see him play for an extended period of time to really get a true gauge for where he is at the NBA level. And if it's something where he's playing 20 minutes for 4 games and then he's out of the rotation because Robert Williams comes back and he doesn't play for 6 games and then he has another 4-game stretch where he's playing 15 to 20 minutes a game, that's also not a consistent role for him to grow within. So it's, even in that situation, hopefully he'd be playing well in those 20 minutes a game. But if he's struggling, his role isn't consistent, and it's tough for a young player to grow in a role that's not fully consistent, especially a big man. So that's where I just want to preach patience right now on September 15th before the season starts. It's the same patience that I preached a year ago with Clingan and 2 years ago with Scoot Henderson. We need to relax. We shouldn't be sitting here calling him better than Clingan or Robert Williams. And on the flip side of things, when he has a game where he struggles or a stretch where he struggles, we shouldn't be freaking out about it.
Well, there's a certain Portland Trailblazers website that writes a lot of articles, and they had one from a couple days ago that said it's not even training camp, but young Hansen looks like the steal of the draft. And then a few days ago, a different author on that same site had an article about how the Blazers should go back to old school basketball and just play Young and Clingan together and just clog the paint and just make. And I see that in chat too. This is talked about a lot. Look at even Cronin and Billups talked about this a little bit in the offseason about how that now, keep in mind, they said this absolutely wasn't going to work with Young and Donovan doing it. They were talking about this prior to us getting Young, so like this was a completely different conversation than playing those two together. But they did talk about I don't remember if it's like the exit interviews or when, but like they did talk about at some point, oh, well, the league is trending back towards, two big lineups and things like that. So with all that in mind, the successful two big lineups almost all have a super mobile big man and a traditional big man, a rim protector, and someone who can guard the perimeter. If you look at like Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, like Mobley can guard pretty much every position at different points. Like he's the problem with Hansen and Clingan is that combo. They're neither one of them can switch on the perimeter. Neither one of them can trap a pick and roll and recover back to their man quickly and stuff like that. And they're exclusive drop bigs at this point. Now, maybe one of them improves their foot speed enough to change that. But as of right now, without a doubt, that they're just neither one is quick enough to make that work. And there's nothing you can do lineup wise, since it's not college zone rules. Like maybe you could get away with running a 3-2 zone or some creative thing if you were in college, but like you can't make it work. Like maybe situationally for a few minutes or something, but like this isn't a situation where I think, oh, if both play well, we have our 4 and our 5 of the future, right? Like it just they're too similar in foot speed and maximum potential on defense. They're both kind of the same thing. And if you look at the successful pairings of bigs that start together, they almost always do two different things on the court or have different skill sets.
Yeah, the reason why you have more two big lineups in today's NBA is because you have more bigs, legitimate 7-footers with guard skills and that are mobile, that move their feet well. That's why. Neither Clingan nor Young Hansen is that. And yeah, that's the most definitive thing you can say right now, is that those dudes should not be playing together. And I'm somebody that thinks that Clingan is a little bit underrated defending the perimeter because he can give guards a gap with how crazy his length is and still bother or even block 3-point shots. And when you give more of a gap on the perimeter, it gives you more time to get your feet moving as a big and then meet them at the rim should they drive, etc. But there is a big difference between Donovan Clingan being able to survive when he's switched out onto a guard and him defending that on the perimeter regularly because he's playing next to Young Hansen, who they have defending the 5. Clingan is not being played to his strengths if he's not playing the 5. And if you're playing Young Hansen out on the perimeter, defending the perimeter regularly, he's going to get played off the floor. And that's just the unfortunate reality. And maybe you could see a huge foot speed improvement from Young, where maybe those two could play together. But they're both 7'2", and you don't usually see 7'2" bigs that come into the league as a drop big without much mobility just all of a sudden develop mobility, right? They're limited by their physical stature. So I don't expect that to ever be the case where those two guys can play next to each other on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, I think with Young's ability to shoot past, like, have the ball out on the perimeter, I think it could be a completely fine fit offensively if Young Hansen develops properly. The defensive side of the ball is the problem. And Young and Clingan should not be compared to Holmgren and Hartenstein, because neither one of those guys are even close to a defensive comparison to Chet Holmgren. Neither one of those guys is close to being a defensive comparison for Evan Mobley. You know, it's Karl Anthony Towns even is more mobile defensively than either of these guys. And there's been some rough moments with him defending the 4 in New York. He just has a bunch of great defenders around him. And he plays a lot of 5 anyway. So, yeah, I don't really understand the comparison of these two guys to other two big lineups, because even when Chet Holmgren was coming into the league, a big selling point was he's very mobile and can defend the rim and the perimeter. Same thing with Evan Mobley. That's not the case with either of these two bigs, and that's completely fine. It just means that it's not going to be an optimal fit to play them next to each other, which is ultimately going to lead to one versus the other. And that's the debate that fans are going to have. And I already see it happening now, Eric, and I've called this in the past with other players and other competitions, right? Where a large amount of this fan base is going to stick their flag on one island or the other. It's either going to be Young Hansen all the way or it's going to be Donovan Clingan all the way. And when one of them's playing well, then the other one's not playing well enough, and vice versa. And it's basically going to be one or the other. Now, I think they both could play well, and I think that would be a great situation for the Blazers to be in. You know, is it best for Young Hansen, if he's truly developing and ready to break out, to only play 24 minutes a game next to Donovan Clingan, who's playing 24 minutes a game? I don't know. Maybe you'd want to see more Young Hansen. So, yes, that's going to be a conversation of maybe having to pick one of the two, but that doesn't mean that when one's playing well, we have to criticize the other, or when one's struggling, we have to use that to prop up the other, because that just becomes a whole... That just becomes narratives of one side versus the other in terms of these two players. We've seen that with previous players in the past, and I think at the end of the day, one might be far outplaying the other, and it's okay to admit that, but I hope that for at least our viewers in our live chat, because we've seen this happen, it doesn't become basically like a, you know, you're either a part of the Young cult or the Clingan cult, and it's, you know, if you're a part of the Young cult, you gotta hate on Clingan in the live chat. If you're Donovan Clingan should start and play 30 minutes a game, that doesn't mean you have to hate on Young Hansen in the live chat. I just feel like that's going to happen, Eric. I see it right now, to be honest.
Yeah, hopefully that's not the case. I am of the opinion that center is, I mean, I won't say it's ideal, but I do feel like with these two in particular, if you just had them go all out for 24 minutes a game, I feel like it could kind of work a little bit, keeping both if they're good. But ultimately, if they're both good, something that we haven't done a lot of, and that's have a trade asset in the positive and not like trying to sell off an asset. Mm-hmm. So like, you know, if they're both really good, and you have like a Jokic and Nurkic type situation in Denver where clearly one of them's better than the other one, then you can move the other one and
trade one of them with a first round pick for the next Mason Plumlee.
Yeah, exactly. You got to be smarter than that, but yeah, I mean, you make it work. But to your point, like, I don't think any of those questions are going to be answered this year. And if we go back to your original question of what's the optimal season looking like, if we're having this conversation, they're both playing really well, and it's like, oh my God, which one's better, take your side right now. Like, I mean, let's face it, this fan base is going to pick Young Hansen if that's the case, and it's going to get very loud on that side. He's got a whole, a whole international fan base to back that side as well. And he is exciting, and he's, Donovan is not a flashy player. I wouldn't call him boring, but like in this sense of the conversation, he is the boring one compared to Young Hansen, and boring is not a bad thing. Like, he does all the things you need to be a winning player, and I do think he is being very underrated in terms of what happened last season with the Blazers and how much of an impact he had on the defense, like becoming good all of a sudden. But I just feel like Young, the way he plays is just so much flashier and so much more prone to being loved by fans versus the kind of worker, just do your job but not really ever do anything super crazy like Clingan does.
I'll say this. If to anybody out there who finds Donovan Clingan to be a boring player, you don't care enough about defense. And you only care about offense.
We know that. We know that.
Which is a lot of people. It's a lot of people. I think maybe the most exciting game last year that I can remember off the top of my head was that game where he took over defensively against Minnesota and finished with like 8 blocks. It was just destroying shots at the rim. That was exciting. He was finishing plays on the other end that game too. It was a pretty complete game from him, but the way he can dominate a defensive game, I find very entertaining. I find very fun. I find it to be the opposite of boring. But for some people, it's the backdoor pass and the flashiness on the offensive side of the ball is a lot more fun than somebody that can hold down your defense. And without Donovan Clingan, I would have no hope for the Blazers making the playoffs this year. I would have no hope for them making the playoffs this year. Their playoff hopes hinge on their potential to be an elite defensive team, top 5 on that end of the floor. Donovan Clingan is as big of a part of that as anybody else. It's him, it's Tamani Kamara. And Tamani Kamara has a greater defensive reputation right now, but if Donovan Clingan was playing 30 minutes a game, I think there's a chance he could have been in conversations for second team all defense with how good his rim protection was last year. And that was with him as a rookie. So going into year 2, where I have hope that he's going to be in better shape and he's going to be smarter on that end of the floor because he gained some very valuable experience last season, I think he will be in conversations for an all-defensive team, just like Tamani Kamara was and ultimately made this past season. And being able to have somebody that deters guys at the rim and blocks a ton of shots, forces misses, is really smart as a rim protector, can raise the floor of your defense tremendously, because even if you got guys that are making defensive mistakes on the perimeter, let's say Matisse Thybulle is gambling for a steal and doesn't get it, you have that guy to clean up the mess on the backside at the rim. And that is something that's going to allow Tamani Kamara, that's going to allow Drew Holiday, that's going to allow even a guy like Scoot Henderson to really pressure guys on the perimeter. Because those guys can have the confidence that even if they get beat, it's not a lost defensive possession by any means. With other guys that have played the center position in years past for the Portland Trail Blazers, if you got beat on the perimeter, it was going to be a parade to the rim, and it was going to be a long defensive night. That's how Donovan Clingan completely transforms the defensive side of the ball, not just because of what he can do, but also because of what he allows his teammates to do defensively. He is such a key part in this team becoming a pesty, pressuring perimeter team and being able to do so successfully, because they've been building that identity, but he's the guy that can help make that identity successful, even though he's not the guy doing that. He's just the guy that's going to clean up when that doesn't go well. So he's super, super important for this team having a chance at the playoffs this year. He's super important for this team trying to become the defensive team that they want to be, that people are going to get all caught up in the flashy stuff that young Hansen can do offensively, and I like that he's a little bit different in Clingan on the offensive side of the ball that could bring a different element into a game. But we should not take that or get too caught up in that to the point where we're underrating what Donovan Clingan can bring on the defensive side of the ball.
Well, one good thing, too, is these guys should be making each other better in practice. And I think that's a huge luxury to have, is two people of similar size with slightly different skill sets that can really maybe, Klingan's going to have to find a way to stop him offensively. And then, I don't think Young was the greatest defender, so is he going to be able to find a way to stop Clingan, even though Klingan's not the greatest offensive player? I think them battling in practice will definitely make each other better, and it helps that they're both like massive human beings, and I just feel like they're going to have some just slugfest in practice. Going against each other, and I think that'll help both of them.
Yep, absolutely. I'm super excited for the centers on this team, Clingan and Young. There's only been really one stretch in the past decade where there was some excitement at the center position. That was when the Blazers got Nurk, and he had a good start to his Blazer tenure, and then it led kind of up until he broke his leg, where he was playing the best basketball of his career, playing dominant basketball right before he broke his leg. And then, of course, he broke his leg and was never quite the same after that. That was really the only time where there was like legitimate excitement at the center position. I mean, some people got excited about Hassan Whiteside. Some people got excited about DeAndre Ayton. But at least I did not share in that same level of excitement, and neither one of those things amounted to anything at all. So it's fun to have two guys, even though they're going to struggle to play next to each other. It's fun to have two guys to be excited about at this center position.
Absolutely, and I think this is important. Maybe not towards winning, but just enjoyment of watching games. I do think it's going to be fun to see what Young can do this year when given opportunities, and I hope he does get at least some opportunities to play, because he is a really enjoyable player to watch, and I mean we're a bit spoiled, us older Blazer fans who like I see Mute That Bozo in chat, who went from like Walton and got to watch like Sabonis play and things like that. Like, we've seen some good passing big men come around here in Portland, but it's always so much fun when you have a good passing big. And Clingan's an underrated passer too. He didn't really get to show that much last year, but if we have like the right type of offense next year, like if Chauncey really does improve it and we have some cutters and some movement off ball and the ball's moving around, I really feel like we have a team where basically anyone in the roster can make a play. Robert Williams can pass a little bit. Our forwards can both like get the ball and go and lead a fast break and pass the ball. Of course, all our guards can pass a little bit. So I just think that's really fun when you have a team where anyone can make a great pass at one point. And so I'm looking forward to Young getting some minutes and playing. As to the question of the title of this, can he be a major difference maker this season? I mean, I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility that he does make a little bit of an impact this season. but being a major difference maker, I don't think he's ready to quite contribute at that level to be like, oh my goodness, this guy's a star year one. Um, so that doesn't mean I don't think he could eventually get there, but I would lean towards not thinking he is going to be anything more than maybe a capable backup this season, best case scenario. You're muted.
I will say, I do think he and Robert Williams could play next to each other if Young can hit the three.
Yep.
Because
but that is also
Rob Will can defend the perimeter
mm-hmm.
and be like a secondary help guy and can fly around.
Well, he could. I don't know if injuries zap that from him yet or not.
I think he's still mobile enough. At least last year, I think he was still mobile enough to be that guy. You need one of those guys to reliably hit threes, and it's going to be Young before it's Robert Williams, of course. So I think that's the key there, where if the Blazers get a couple injuries at forward positions, maybe that gives Young an opportunity to play where Robert Williams is playing some four. I do think that's much more viable than Clingan with Young. Even though like Clingan and Young are better shooters than Robert Williams. I'm really curious to see what Clingan shoots this year from three, by the way. I wonder if he can, on the same diet or maybe a little bit more volume, if he can get above 30%. He was 27% last year. I'm hopeful. It would be cool to see. But yeah, at the end of the day for Young, man, there's gonna be growing pains. It would be cool to see him get spurts. If their rotation going into the season was Donovan Clingan plays 27 minutes a game at center, Robert Williams plays 15 minutes a game, and Young Hansen plays 6 minutes, that adds up to a 48-minute game. If that's the diet where Young Hansen's just getting a 3-minute spurt in the first half and second half just to see how he does, and maybe if he starts playing really well, maybe it gets a little bit extended run. If he's struggling, that it's only a 3-minute stretch, how much is it really going to hurt you? And if it's actually legitimately hurting the team in just 3 minutes and a half, then you can cut him out of the rotation. If that was the plan at the start of the season, I would be perfectly okay with that plan. I would support that plan. Now, if they really want to play Matisse Thybulle, then I almost have to wonder if you have to play some small ball lineups where you play like Denny at some 5. Because with Drew, Scoot, Sharp, Denny, Tamani, Jeremy Grant, who I think is still going to play a decent chunk of minutes each game this year, it's tough to play those guys enough minutes and play Matisse Thybulle, 10-plus minutes a game. So if they want Matisse Thybulle to be a legitimate part of things, then you have to open up some minutes somehow, which, unless you're cutting one of those guys' minutes, which I would not, you're going to have to slide one of those guys up to center. I think Denny as a small ball center in some lineups could be very intriguing. I've talked about that a little bit. He's strong. He can rebound. He can battle against centers, especially if you play him with Tamani, who has had some good moments battling against centers as well. That could be a fun, really fast-paced small ball lineup. Would prefer to play that lineup against bench units, so I don't know how you stagger things around to get that combo of Tamani and Denny at the 4-5 against the bench lineup. But, like a lineup with Scoot, Drew, Thybulle, Tamani, and Denny could be very intriguing as a defense that hopefully forces a lot of turnovers, has some switchability, and would get running the other way. I wouldn't mind seeing that as well. But I would probably rather see Young play than Thybulle. To be honest, I don't know how many other fans share that same sentiment. You can let me know in the chat who you would rather see play in the lineup to start opening day. I think one of those two guys will
don't play the same position.
I think one of those two guys will be playing some minutes on opening night, even if everybody's healthy.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's why it's so fascinating with Hansen is, part of it will probably come down to how well he does in training camp against the NBA type guys. But like we heard Chauncey say after they drafted him that he would feel comfortable putting him in a game right away. Now how much of that was hyperbole because they just drafted him and they're trying to hype him up and stuff,
And
and
act
how
like
much
they
of
didn't
that
reach.
was truthfulness. So that remains to be seen, I guess. But I mean, he did say he felt comfortable putting him in a game. So as long as he doesn't look completely out of place in training camp, I'd have to imagine he at least gets a shot, like you said, to play some minutes. And then if he plays one of those minutes, maybe he gets a little bit more run in the second half or something. But the thing is, though, this team is going to be trying to win right off the bat this year. And we know they have a little bit of a difficult schedule at the beginning of the season. So I could also see a scenario where as long as Rob Will's healthy, Chauncey really relies on the veterans like he has in the past and doesn't give Young much of a shot to play right away. I just hope he just doesn't get discouraged if that's the case, because I think at some point this season we're going to need him to at least play a little bit and hopefully not be overmatched out there.
Yep. 100% agree. That's all my thoughts I had for this conversation. We're going to wrap up this stream with taking a look at how my parlays did. That Eric graded.
You won the two that I didn't like, or the parts of the ones I didn't like.
Yeah, which was this one. The only one I won on this one. This one was a tough beat. I took the screenshot right before the game ended, but Justin Herbert was not throwing for any more yards because the Chargers were up. Look at this. Brutal beat, man. I got the Kyren Williams, no touchdowns right. Blake Corum started to get some goal line work there. 5 passing yards short from Justin Herbert and 2 receiving yards short from Bijan Robinson. And that was, 8.78. So would have been like a $40 payout. Brutal. Missed it by 7 total yards. We hate bad beats. This one I wasn't even close on. Didn't get anything right. Shout out to Jalen Hurts for 15 rushing yards. His stats, his statistical production, passing offense there in Philadelphia has been non-existent. You know, as an A.J. Brown fan, which was a part of my third parlay, I had under on him, over on CD, over on Travis Etienne. Apparently, Derrick Henry didn't want to do much against Cleveland. Game script didn't go in his way. So these were all just kind of bad beats. I got 3 right here. Missed the other one by 7 yards. We hate bad beats, but what I love about Sleeper is they give you promotions. We got Jaden Daniels over half a passing yard. I mean, that's all. If you take the under, you're just throwing away money for no reason. That's basically a free square. And I combined that with a Pat Mahomes over 23 rushing yards. He had a rushing touchdown, 66 rushing yards. Crush that. And that was a $7 entry for $21. Basically a parlay where one of them is basically just free. So I just needed Patrick Mahomes to rush for more than 23 yards, and I won. So that's the thing I love about Sleeper.
Like right away.
Yeah. I didn't even have to worry about that one. Pat Mahomes took care of me very quickly to start that game, which, you know, as a Niner fan, I'm not a Pat Mahomes fan, but I was until we won my parlay, and then it was cool to see them fall to 0-2. But that's what I love about Sleeper is they have promotions and stuff that can make things work, even if you're worth it, even if you're dealing with a bad beat on a parlay like I did right here. You can still cash in and win with Sleeper. Use promo code Uprise. That helps us win. That helps the channel if you use that promo code Uprise, and you'll get a 100% match up to $100 on Sleeper if you want to get in for the NFL. Or coming up soon, of course, we'll have NBA, which is going to be a ton of fun to play on Sleeper as well. We'll see what season-long stuff they have. Maybe we'll do some season-long parlays and keep track of it as the year goes on. That could be a lot of fun. So shout out to Sleeper for sponsoring the channel. Link in description to sign up for them. Eric, anything else?
No, man. Thanks everyone for watching the show. Hope you all have a good rest of your night, and hope to see you back on Thursday.
Yep, we'll see you guys on Thursday. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Looking forward to October. We only have 2 weeks until media day. Or is it 3 weeks? I believe it's the 29th. Maybe it's the 6th. I don't know. I'm not credentialed yet. We'll see. But yeah, media day start. It's either the 29th or the 6th. 2 or 3 weeks away. And we'll have some quotes to talk about, and the season will be here. Can't wait. Appreciate you guys spending the off season with us. We'll have some more preview live streams Thursday, next Monday, Thursday after that. Some preview videos as well, so stay tuned. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button on the way out of here. Easiest way to support the channel. And we're gone. We're gone. We're out of here. Until next time, as always, peace out. Go Blazers!